Hello everyone, Mr. Love here, coming to you from the diesel shop. Today we're just going to do a quick little video on just how to put our pistons into our cylinder here. So on our piston, we have the piston rings on there. We have two compression rings and our oil control ring on the style piston here. So if we tried to just force it down into the cylinder right now, the rings would get caught and we'd break the rings on it. So in this video, we're going to show you how to use a ring compressor to compress the rings so then we can install it into the cylinder. First thing we're going to do, we'll just remove the cap from the bottom of our connecting rod here. We'll get that unbolted and out of the way. You should already have this all marked and everything for which direction it goes once it goes in there. So we're going to be using the markings on the piston to put it back into the cylinder that it belongs into. Okay, so here we have number one piston that's marked on here. On here we have a little mark telling us that it goes on this side of the block here. So we're going to just line that mark up with the side of the block here. So we know it's going to go in just like this right here. It's going to be a nice snug fit. We're going to have to compress these rings to get it slid down in there. So first thing we want to do is get a little oil. We'll lube her up here a little bit. Okay, so oil is going to be our friend here. So we're going to lube up our cylinder a little bit. Don't be afraid to get in there, get a little dirty. We're also going to lube up our piston a little bit. We'll put a little more on there here in a second. Okay, so we got a nice amount of oil on there. We'll put it all around with our hands, and we'll also make sure our cylinder is nice and lubricated there. Okay, so now we can take our piston, make sure it's facing the right direction. We'll start it down in our cylinder a little bit, let it sit there. Okay, next we're going to take our ring compressor here. So most of these have a little ratchet mechanism on it. So the more you tighten it down, the tighter it gets. And once it's tightened down, it'll stay at that tightness there. To release it, a lot of them will have a little button of some sort where you push the button and it'll expand back out. Okay, so this one here, you hold down the button, do a little twist on there to get it out. Okay, so we'll get everything set up. You can do this out of the engine too, but I kind of like to just let it sit here. It's a little bit easier for me, especially if you're doing it alone. Okay, so we have it sitting on the edge there where it's exposed out of there. Now we're going to put our piston ring compressor on there. We're going to tighten it down. That's going to squish our rings in for us where we want them to be. One other thing real quick before we put those in there, we want to make sure our rings are staggered. Some of our pistons will have a little pin on there where the ring locks into that pin so it can't rotate around. But most of them aren't going to have the pin. So what you do is just put the ring gaps away from each other. We don't want them lined up. That'll allow the compression to get down, down into the crankcase where we don't want it to. So our rings are staggered. Everything looks good on it. Everything's nice and lubricated there. And we're going to tighten this down nice and tight on there. It's going to suck our rings in for us. Okay. So we got it nice and tight. Everything looks good on there. We want to make sure that our crankshaft is lined up right to accept this connecting rod as it goes down through there. If you have a buddy with you helping you out, it's good to have them watch that while you lightly tap it down. It's nice and tight on there. You shouldn't be able to see any gap around the piston here. Okay, so now we're going to set it right down inside there. Remember, make sure our piston's facing the correct way there. Now we're going to use our special piston hammer. It's offset there, so it helps drive it down in there. If you don't have a piston hammer, you can use a little block of wood or something like that. Just don't be taking pieces of metal and driving down on your piston. We don't like that very much. So we've got everything lined up. If you have a buddy, you can have them watch below there to make sure it's going down on the crankshaft where the connecting rod hooks onto it. So we've got everything lined up. We're going to go nice and slow here. Just going to do a gentle tap in there. If for any reason it gets stuck at any time, stop right away. Otherwise, you're going to break your rings. So everything's going good. Everything's looking good here. Going to continue going. Okay. And once you're down inside the cylinder, this should pop right off for you. And now you're all done there. So you can just continue on. You can do all the cylinders, hook them up one at a time as you're going through there. So we got this one installed. Now we put our connecting rod cap on to the crankshaft on the bottom there. Make sure it's facing the right direction. Make sure it's nicely oiled here on the bearing and everything. Torque it down to spec. and then rotate your engine over. Do that each time. That way, if one of the pistons or one of the connecting rods are, not right and it's binding up on you, you'll know what cylinder it is right away. So as soon as you put the piston in, put that little connecting rod cap on there, torque it to spec, and rotate the engine over and make sure it still rotates over. Again, we want to lubricate our cylinders. We want to lubricate down here. Oil's our friend. Oil's going to be inside our engine anyway, so don't be afraid to get everything nice and oily as you're putting it together. Okay, that's all. Have a good one.